Rachel Moore thought the worst part of being a single mother was the exhaustion. She was wrong. The worst part was the night her coworkers turned her loneliness into entertainment, seating her beside the company's other single parent at the holiday party like some cruel social experiment. What they didn't know was that the quiet man beside her wasn't who they thought he was. And when he finally spoke up, the entire room would wish they'd kept their mouths shut. If you want to see how one moment of dignity can shatter years of workplace cruelty, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The ballroom of the Grandview Hotel sparkled with calculated extravagance. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across tables draped in white linen, each centerpiece a tower of winter roses that probably cost more than Rachel Moore's monthly grocery budget. She stood in the doorway, one hand clutching her plain black purse, the other smoothing down the simple navy dress she'd worn to 3 weddings and a funeral. Around her, Hartwell and Associates employees laughed and mingled in their designer clothes, their voices bright with the particular energy that came from open bars and year-end bonuses. Rachel was 40 minutes late. Again. It wasn't intentional. It never was. Her daughter Maya's babysitter had been late. Then Maya had cried about a homework assignment she'd forgotten to mention, and by the time Rachel had soothed her, rechecked that the babysitter had the emergency numbers, and driven across town in Friday night traffic, the party was already in full swing. She could have skipped it entirely. Should have, probably. But her manager, Christine Valdez, had made it clear in that carefully worded way managers had that attendance at the annual holiday party wasn't technically mandatory but absolutely expected. It's important for team bonding, Christine had said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. We notice who shows up. So here Rachel was, scanning the sea of familiar faces for an empty seat, trying to ignore the way conversation seemed to pause as she passed, the way eyes tracked her movement across the room. "Rachel, over here!" She turned to see Christine waving from a table near the center of the room, her red dress vibrant against the white decor. Relief flooded through Rachel as she made her way over, weaving between tables and dodging servers with trays of champagne. But as she got closer, something in Christine's expression made her slow down. It was a particular kind of smile, bright and sharp at the same time, like light reflecting off broken glass. "We saved you a seat," Christine said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Right next to Ethan." Rachel's gaze followed Christine's gesture to the man sitting alone at the end of the table. Ethan Cole from Facilities Management. She'd seen him around, quiet, maybe mid-40s, usually in work clothes, even when everyone else dressed business casual. He had the kind of face that was easy to forget, not because it was unremarkable, but because he seemed to actively avoid being noticed. Right now he sat very still, his hands folded on the table in front of him, staring at his empty plate with the careful blankness of someone pretending not to hear what was being said about him. "Perfect match, don't you think?" Someone stage whispered from across the table. Rachel didn't catch who said it, but she heard the ripple of laughter that followed. Her stomach dropped. "I don't—" she started, but Christine was already pulling out the chair. "Sit, sit. Dinner's about to be served." Rachel sat because standing there arguing would only make it worse. As she settled into her chair, she became acutely aware of the attention focused on their end of the table. Not the kind of attention that came from genuine interest, but the predatory focus of people who'd found something to amuse themselves with. "So," Christine said brightly, her voice carrying across the table, "now both our single parents are here. Isn't that nice?" The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of reaction spreading outward. A few people had the grace to look uncomfortable, but more were grinning, leaning into their partners to whisper, their eyes dancing with malicious delight. Rachel felt heat crawl up her neck. She'd dealt with this kind of thing before. The well-meaning setups, the assumption that being a single mother meant she was desperate for companionship, the casual disrespect disguised as concern. But this was different. This was public, deliberate, cruel. Beside her, Ethan remained absolutely still. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge the comment, didn't react at all. For a brief, irrational moment, Rachel felt a flash of anger toward him. But then she saw it, the slight tension in his jaw, the deliberate way he kept his breathing even. He was enduring this too. "You know," Brad from marketing said, leaning back in his chair with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in a room, "I think this might be the most thoughtful seating arrangement I've ever seen at a corporate event." "Right?" his girlfriend Melissa agreed, her voice bright with false innocence. Sometimes people just need a little push. More laughter. Rachel focused on unfolding her napkin, placing it in her lap with careful precision. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. I heard you have a daughter, Rachel, Christine continued, as if she were making polite conversation and not orchestrating humiliation. How old is she now? 7, Rachel said quietly, the word feeling heavy in her mouth. 7, such a sweet age. Christine turned to Ethan. And you have a son, don't you, Ethan? What is he? 8? 9? For the first time, Ethan spoke. His voice was quiet, carefully neutral. 9. Perfect. Christine clapped her hands together. See? You already have so much in common. The laughter that followed was louder this time, more open. Rachel's hands tightened around her napkin under the table. She could feel her face burning, could hear the blood rushing in her ears. This was worse than being invisible. This was being made into a spectacle, a source of entertainment for people who went home to their perfect partners and their perfect lives. Should we take bets on how this turns out? Someone called from a nearby table, and the suggestion was met with enthusiastic agreement. Rachel's vision blurred slightly. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry at this party. She'd promised herself a lot of things, actually. That she'd be professional, that she'd network, that she'd show everyone she was more than just the single mom who left early for school pickups and declined happy hours because she couldn't afford both a babysitter and drinks. But right now, all she wanted was to disappear. Servers began bringing out the first course, some kind of soup in wide white bowls. The distraction should have helped, should have shifted attention away from her and Ethan. Instead, it seemed to embolden people. You know what? Brad said, loud enough for half the room to hear. I think we should make this official. Someone grab a photographer. Oh my God, yes. Melissa was already pulling out her phone. We need to document this. That's really not necessary, Rachel said, trying to keep her voice steady. Come on, don't be shy. Christine leaned across the table, her smile predatory. It's just for fun. But it wasn't fun. There was nothing fun about the way people were looking at them, nothing playful about the cruel edge beneath the laughter. This was the kind of fun that came at someone else's expense, that turned human beings into punchlines. Rachel pushed her chair back slightly, ready to excuse herself to the bathroom or the parking lot or anywhere that wasn't here, but before she could stand, she felt it, the smallest shift in energy beside her. Ethan hadn't moved, hadn't turned to look at the people mocking them, but something had changed. The careful blankness in his expression had given way to something else, something harder to read. He picked up his water glass, took a slow sip, then set it down with deliberate precision. Your soup's getting cold, he said quietly, so only she could hear. It was such a simple statement, so utterly mundane in the midst of everything happening around them, but somehow it steadied her. He wasn't telling her to ignore them or to rise above it or any of the other useless platitudes people offered when they had no idea what it felt like to be reduced to a joke. He was just acknowledging that she was here, that this moment existed, that soup still got cold regardless of cruelty. Rachel picked up her spoon. The soup was butternut squash, smooth and slightly sweet. She focused on it, on the warmth spreading through her chest, on the simple act of eating. Around them, the conversation had shifted but not disappeared. People were still watching, still waiting for a reaction that would justify their entertainment. I can't believe HR approved this seating chart, someone muttered, not quietly enough. Maybe HR has a sense of humor for once, someone else replied. Ethan's hand tightened almost imperceptibly around his spoon, but he didn't look up. The main course arrived, chicken breast with roasted vegetables that looked beautiful and tasted like cardboard. Rachel ate mechanically, hyper-aware of every glance, every whisper. Across the table, Christine was holding court, her laughter ringing out like bells designed to draw attention back to their end of the table. So, Ethan, Christine said during a lull in conversation, Rachel works in finance. I bet you two have never really talked before, have you? No, Ethan said simply. Well, now's your chance, Christine gestured between them like a game show host revealing a prize. Go on, get to know each other. We'll give you some privacy. She said this last part with exaggerated emphasis, triggering another wave of laughter. Several people at nearby tables had turned their chairs slightly to watch, not even pretending to be subtle about their interest. Rachel felt something crack inside her. Years of holding it together, of maintaining professional composure while juggling a demanding job and single parenthood, of smiling through casual judgments and thoughtless comments. It all pressed down on her at once. Her hands were shaking. She set down her fork carefully, afraid she might drop it. "Excuse me," she said, pushing her chair back. "Where are you going?" Christine's voice followed her, syrupy with false concern. "Dinner's not over yet." "Bathroom," Rachel managed, already walking away. She didn't run. She wanted to, but she didn't. She walked with measured steps across the ballroom, feeling dozens of eyes tracking her progress. Behind her, she heard Christine's voice rise again. "Give her a minute, Ethan. She'll be back." More laughter. The hallway outside the ballroom was blessedly empty and quiet. Rachel leaned against the wall, pressing her palms against the cool surface, trying to steady her breathing. The sounds of the party were muffled here, reduced to a distant hum of voices and clinking glasses. She'd known this job wasn't perfect. She'd known that as a single mother she'd face certain assumptions, certain limitations. But she'd thought that if she worked hard enough, proved herself competent enough, people would see past it. She'd been naive. Footsteps approached from the ballroom. Rachel straightened, preparing to paste on a smile and deflect whoever had come to check on her, or worse, to continue the joke in private. But it was Ethan. He stopped a respectful distance away, hands in his pockets, not quite meeting her eyes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he moved to lean against the wall a few feet from her, staring at the generic landscape painting hung across from them. "I'm not here to convince you to come back," he said quietly, "or to tell you it's not that bad, or that you should let it roll off your back." Rachel blinked, surprised by the directness of it. "I'm just—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've been the entertainment before. Different circumstances, but same feeling. So I thought you might want someone nearby who gets it. That's all." Something in Rachel's chest loosened slightly. She studied him properly for the first time that night. He had tired eyes, the kind that came from too many late nights and early mornings. His suit was clean but not expensive, worn at the cuffs in a way that suggested it was hauled out only for occasions like this. There were faint stains on his hands that looked like they might be permanent, paint or grease or something else that came from working with his hands. "How long have you worked at Hartwell?" she asked. 3 months, he said. "I'm in facilities, maintenance, repairs, that kind of thing. I've seen you around. You fixed the copy machine on my floor last week." He nodded. "The one that kept jamming. Paper feed sensor was misaligned. You also replaced the light fixture in the women's bathroom. The ballast was shot. Fire hazard waiting to happen." There was something calming about this exchange, simple, factual, grounded in the mundane reality of building maintenance. It was so far removed from the performance happening in the ballroom that Rachel felt herself breathing easier. "Your daughter," Ethan said. "Does she know you're here tonight?" Rachel smiled despite everything. "She knows I'm at the boring work party. I promised to bring her back a dessert if they had anything good. My son thinks I'm at a meeting, which technically isn't wrong, but I didn't correct him." Ethan's expression softened slightly. "He hates it when I'm gone in the evenings. We have this routine, pizza and a movie on Friday nights. I missed it for this." "Maya and I do breakfast for dinner on Fridays," Rachel said. "Pancakes shaped like animals. She's very particular about getting the ears right. Lucas is into dinosaurs right now. Everything has to be dinosaur-themed. Dinosaur lunchbox, dinosaur backpack, dinosaur pajamas. Maya's stuck on unicorns, unicorn everything. I tried to explain that real horses are actually very cool, but apparently reality is not as interesting as sparkles and rainbows." They both smiled at that. Real smiles, not the strained expressions they'd worn in the ballroom. For a moment, the absurdity of the evening faded into the background, replaced by the simple shared experience of being parents who understood what it meant to build a life around someone small and entirely dependent on you. "We should probably go back in," Rachel said, though she made no move toward the door. "Probably," Ethan agreed, also not moving. "They're going to make it worse if we're out here together too long. They're going to make it worse regardless." He was right. Rachel could already imagine the comments, the knowing looks, the jokes about them sneaking off together. Nothing they did or didn't do would change the narrative that had been decided for them. "I hate this," she said quietly. "I hate that they think they can do this, that they think our lives are some kind of romantic comedy setup for their amusement. They don't think of us as real people, Ethan said. We're just parts of the scenery that occasionally do interesting things. The bluntness of it should have stung, but instead it felt validating. Someone else saw it. Someone else understood. They stood in silence for another moment, the distant sounds of the party filtering through the closed ballroom doors. Then Ethan straightened. "If you want to leave, I'll tell them you weren't feeling well," he said. "I can handle whatever comes after." Rachel considered it. She could call the babysitter, say she'd be home early, climb into comfortable clothes, and spend the rest of the evening reading to Maya before bed. She could avoid the rest of the evening, the desserts and speeches and whatever other humiliations were planned. But something in her refused. She'd spent 3 years at this company. 3 years working her way up from an entry-level position to a role with actual responsibility. 3 years proving that being a single mother didn't make her less dedicated or less capable. 3 years of being professional, being pleasant, being easy to overlook. And they'd reduced all of it to a seating chart joke. "No," she said, "I'm not leaving." Ethan looked at her directly for the first time, something like respect flickering in his expression. "Okay," he said simply. "Then we go back together." They walked back into the ballroom side by side, not touching, not performing the connection everyone expected, just two people refusing to be run off. The noise hit them immediately. Laughter, conversation, the clink of forks against dessert plates. Christine spotted them first. Her eyes lit up with vicious delight. "There they are," she announced, loud enough to carry across multiple tables. "We were starting to think you'd run off somewhere romantic." The attention swung back to them like a spotlight. Rachel felt Ethan tense beside her but kept walking, her head high, her expression carefully neutral. They reached their seats and sat down in unison, a choreography of dignity in the face of mockery. Dessert had been served in their absence, chocolate mousse in small glass cups topped with whipped cream and a mint leaf. Rachel picked up her spoon, determined to act as if nothing unusual was happening, as if she couldn't hear the whispers or see the phones being pointed in their direction. "So?" Brad leaned across the table, his grin predatory. "Did you two have a nice talk?" "The hallway has better acoustics," Ethan said mildly, taking a bite of mousse. "Really highlights the engineering of the building." The response was so unexpected, so deliberately obtuse, that it created a moment of confused silence. Then someone laughed, not mockingly, but genuinely amused by the deflection. The moment broke the rhythm Christine had been building, scattered the focus just enough. But Christine wasn't deterred. "You know what I think?" she said, her voice taking on a theatrical quality. "I think fate brought you two together tonight. I mean, what are the odds? Both single parents, both at the same company, both sitting next to each other at the holiday party?" "The odds were 100%, Ethan said quietly, "since you made the seating chart." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Several people shifted uncomfortably. Christine's smile faltered for just a second before reasserting itself, harder than before. "It was a thoughtful gesture," she said, her tone sharpening. "I thought you might appreciate meeting someone in a similar situation." "Is that what you thought?" Ethan's voice remained calm, but something had changed in it, a weight that made people listen. "Or did you think it would be funny to put two people on display and see what happened?" The conversation around them died. Even nearby tables had gone quiet, sensing drama escalating into something else. Christine's face flushed. "I don't appreciate your tone, and I don't appreciate being treated like entertainment," Ethan said. He still hadn't raised his voice, but the words carried. "Neither does Rachel. But that hasn't stopped anyone here, has it?" Rachel's heart was hammering. This was escalating in ways she hadn't anticipated, hadn't wanted. She'd expected to endure the evening quietly, to survive it with her dignity intact. But Ethan was doing something else. He was pushing back. "It was just a joke," Brad said, his earlier confidence wavering. "Nobody meant anything by it." "Just a joke," Ethan repeated slowly. "Right, the kind of joke where you laugh and other people feel small. That kind." "Look, buddy," Brad started, but Ethan cut him off. "I'm not your buddy. I fix your lights and your copy machines and your plumbing, and most days you don't even look at me long enough to say thank you. But tonight I'm visible because you decided I'd be useful for entertainment. Do you understand how that feels?" The silence was absolute now. Rachel could hear her own breathing, could feel the weight of dozens of eyes bouncing between Ethan and the people at their table. Christine stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I think you're overreacting." "Am I?" Ethan looked up at her, and there was something in his expression that made her take a small step back. "You orchestrated this entire situation knowing exactly how it would play out. You weaponized loneliness and turned it into a spectator sport. And when called on it, you want to pretend it was harmless. Which part am I overreacting to?" Someone near the stage was moving, Rachel noticed peripherally. One of the executives, maybe, or someone from HR. This was spiraling beyond a table dispute into something that would have consequences. But then something unexpected happened. A man in an expensive suit, Rachel recognized him vaguely as someone from upper management, approached their table with purposeful strides. He looked directly at Ethan, and Rachel braced herself for the reprimand, the dismissal, the professional destruction that was about to unfold. Instead, the man said, "Mr. Cole, they're ready for you on stage." The words made no sense. Rachel saw the same confusion on Christine's face, on Brad's, on everyone at the table. Ethan stood smoothly, straightening his jacket. "Thank you, David." "Wait," Christine said, her voice climbing. "What's happening? Why would—" But Ethan was already walking toward the stage, David falling into step beside him. The ballroom had gone completely silent now, everyone watching this unexpected turn of events. Rachel's mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. "Mr. Cole, they're ready for you on stage." The deference in David's tone, the way people were suddenly looking uncertain, looking worried. The CEO, Richard Hartwell himself, was standing at the microphone on stage. He smiled as Ethan approached, shook his hand warmly, then turned to address the room. "I know we usually save speeches for after dessert," Richard said, his voice carrying easily across the quiet room. "But I think tonight calls for something different. For those who don't know, and clearly many of you don't, let me introduce Ethan Cole." Rachel watched Christine's face drain of color. "Ethan is the founder and majority shareholder of Cole Industries," Richard continued, "our parent company. He's also the reason half the people in this room still have jobs after the restructuring last year. For the past 3 months, he's been working undercover in our facilities department, observing company culture from the ground up." The silence was so complete that Rachel could hear someone's phone vibrating 3 tables away. "Ethan," Richard stepped aside, gesturing to the microphone. Ethan stood there for a moment, looking out across the ballroom. His eyes found Rachel's, held them briefly, and in that look she saw something she recognized. Not triumph, not vindication, but a bone-deep weariness that came from seeing the worst of people while trying to maintain faith in the best. Then he turned his attention to the rest of the room, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and clear and absolutely unforgiving. "I didn't speak up because of who I am," he said. "I spoke up because of what happened. Because cruelty dressed up as humor is still cruelty. Because turning someone's personal life into your entertainment is a violation of basic human decency." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the room like snow. Rachel watched faces change, some flushing with shame, others hardening with defensiveness, still others carefully blanking into the professional masks people wore when they knew they'd crossed a line but didn't want to admit it. "I've spent 3 months here," Ethan continued, his hands resting lightly on the podium. "I fixed your broken equipment, cleaned up messes, listened to conversations you had because you thought I was invisible. I've watched how you treat people you consider beneath you, how you talk about colleagues when you think no one important is listening, how you turn human beings into jokes because it's easier than treating them with respect." Christine had gone pale, her hand gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had gone white. Brad had sunk lower in his chair, his earlier bravado evaporating. Around the room, people were exchanging glances, silently calculating how much trouble they might be in, how many of their careless comments might have been overheard. "Tonight was supposed to be a celebration," Ethan said, "a chance to appreciate the work you've all done this year, to enjoy each other's company, to mark the end of a successful period for this company. Instead, some of you decided it would be entertaining to humiliate 2 people whose only crime was being single parents trying to balance demanding careers with raising children alone." Rachel felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but they weren't tears of shame anymore. They were something else. Relief, maybe, or vindication, or simply the overwhelming emotion of being seen after years of being overlooked. "I want to be clear about something," Ethan said, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intimate even as it carried to every corner of the ballroom. "I'm not speaking up because I have power. I'm not doing this because I can make your lives difficult, though I certainly could. I'm doing this because I'm a single parent, because I know what it's like to leave work early for a sick kid and see the judgment in people's eyes. To decline social events because childcare costs money you don't have. To be reduced to a demographic instead of being seen as a whole person." He looked directly at their table, his gaze moving from Christine to Brad to Melissa and the others who'd participated in the evening's entertainment. "When you made Rachel and me into your joke tonight, you weren't just being thoughtless. You were being cruel. And the worst part is that you knew it. You knew exactly what you were doing, how it would feel, what it would cost us in dignity. You just didn't care because our feelings mattered less than your amusement." The words hit like physical blows. Rachel saw Christine flinch, saw Brad's face crumple slightly, saw the way people around the room were starting to realize the full scope of what they'd participated in or witnessed without intervening. "Starting Monday," Ethan said, his tone shifting into something more businesslike, "there will be changes. HR will be conducting mandatory training on workplace respect and discrimination. We'll be reviewing our policies on harassment, yes, harassment, because that's what this was. And we'll be having individual conversations with everyone who contributed to tonight's behavior." Richard Hartwell nodded from his position beside the stage, his expression grave. This wasn't just Ethan speaking now. This was official company policy being announced, consequences being laid out in real time. "But policies and training can only do so much," Ethan continued. "Real change has to come from you. From choosing to see your colleagues as people deserving of respect regardless of their personal circumstances. From recognizing that someone's relationship status or family situation is none of your business and certainly not your entertainment. From understanding that cruelty doesn't become acceptable just because you dress it up as humor." He stepped back from the microphone, and for a moment Rachel thought he was done. But then he added quietly, "I have a 9-year-old son named Lucas. He has autism and anxiety, and some days getting him to school is the hardest thing I'll do all day. On those days, I come to work exhausted, worried, running on coffee and determination. And I'm supposed to trust that the people here will treat me professionally, will judge me on my work rather than my personal life." Tonight proved how naive that expectation was. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier, more uncomfortable. This wasn't just abstract corporate speak about respect and policies. This was a person, a father, laying bare the reality of his life and the ways their casual cruelty had impacted it. Richard took the microphone back. "Thank you, Ethan. I think we all have a lot to think about tonight." He surveyed the room, his expression making it clear that this wasn't a suggestion. "The party is ending early. Please make your way out in an orderly fashion. Department heads, I'll expect to see you in my office Monday morning at 8. The dismissal was absolute. People began standing, gathering coats and purses, moving toward the exits in small clusters. But the usual chatter was absent. Instead, there was a subdued murmur of voices, the shuffle of feet, the weight of collective shame settling over the room. Ethan descended from the stage, David walking beside him and speaking in low tones that Rachel couldn't hear. She remained seated, watching the exodus, not quite sure what to do with herself. Around her, the table had emptied quickly. Christine had disappeared immediately, Brad and Melissa close behind her, others scattering like startled birds. She should leave too, should collect her coat, walk to her car, drive home to Maya. The evening was over, the spectacle concluded. But her legs felt unsteady, and her mind was still catching up with everything that had just happened. "Rachel?" She looked up to find Ethan standing beside the table, his earlier composure showing signs of wear around the edges. Up close, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes that spoke of stress held carefully in check. "Are you okay?" he asked. The question was so unexpected that she almost laughed. He just revealed himself as the owner of the parent company, delivered a speech that would undoubtedly change careers and possibly cost people their jobs, and he was asking if she was okay. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Are you?" He pulled out the chair beside her and sat down, suddenly looking very tired. "No, but I've been not okay for a while now, so at least it's familiar territory." Around them, the ballroom continued to empty. Servers had begun clearing tables, moving efficiently through the space with the practiced invisibility of people who'd witnessed countless corporate events and their associated dramas. The music had been turned off, leaving only the ambient sounds of cleanup and departure. "You didn't have to do that," Rachel said. "Speak up, I mean. You could have just let it happen and dealt with it quietly later." "I could have," Ethan agreed. "But I was tired of watching people get away with this kind of thing. Tired of seeing good people get ground down by casual cruelty. Tired of being invisible unless someone needed their plumbing fixed." "You were never going to stay invisible," Rachel said. "Not really. They would have found out eventually who you were." "True. But I wanted to see what this place was really like first. What people were like when they thought there were no consequences." He leaned back in his chair, staring up at the chandelier above them. "Turns out my instincts were right. There were problems in the culture. Big ones." Rachel thought about her 3 years at Hartwell and Associates, about the small indignities and casual disrespect she'd endured and dismissed as just part of working life. The comments about leaving early for school pickups. The assumptions that she wasn't committed because she had a child. The way she'd been passed over for projects that required evening meetings or travel. She'd told herself it was just how things were, that she needed to work harder to prove herself. But maybe the problem wasn't her. Maybe it had never been her. "What happens now, what?" she asked. "Now?" Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. "Now HR starts investigating. People get reprimanded or fired depending on the severity of their behavior. We implement new policies and training and hope it actually makes a difference. And I go back to being the invisible facilities guy for a while longer, because I'm not done observing yet." "You're going to keep working in maintenance? Even after this?" "Why not? The work needs doing regardless of who I am. And I learn more about a company by fixing its broken things than I ever would sitting in an executive office." He glanced at her. "Though I suspect it's going to be awkward for a while. People knowing who I really am." "That's an understatement." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the ballroom transform from party venue back to empty event space. Most of the guests had left now, just a few stragglers collecting forgotten items or finishing hushed conversations in corners. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Of course." "Why didn't you leave? When you went to the hallway, you could have just kept walking to your car. You could have avoided all of this." Rachel considered the question. Why hadn't she left? It would have been easier, safer, less complicated. "I guess I was tired too," she said finally. "Tired of running from uncomfortable situations. Tired of letting other people's cruelty dictate my actions. Tired of feeling like I had to apologize for being a single mother." She looked at him directly. "And maybe tired of being alone in all of it." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "Yeah, that part is hard. Being the only one who sees what's happening, who feels what you're feeling." "Until tonight," Rachel said. "Tonight I wasn't alone." "No," he agreed quietly. "You weren't." The moment stretched between them, not romantic but deeply human. Two people recognizing each other across the distance of their separate struggles. Then Rachel's phone buzzed in her purse, breaking the spell. She pulled it out to find a text from her babysitter. "Maya's asking when you'll be home. She wants to show you something." Reality reasserted itself. She had a daughter waiting, a life beyond this ballroom and its dramas. "I need to go," she said, standing and gathering her purse and coat. Ethan stood as well. "Of course. I didn't mean to keep you." "You didn't keep me. I just need to get home to Maya. And I should check on Lucas. He'll be asleep by now, but I always look in on him when I get home. Make sure he's covered, that his nightlight's still on." Ethan smiled slightly. Single-parent rituals. "The late-night check," Rachel nodded. "Making sure they're still breathing, still safe, still there. Even though they always are. Even though." They walked together toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the mostly empty ballroom. Near the doors, Richard Hartwell was speaking with David and a woman Rachel recognized from HR. Richard looked up as they approached, his expression concerned. "Rachel, I want to apologize," he said immediately. "What happened tonight was completely unacceptable, and it happened on my watch. I take full responsibility." Rachel wasn't sure how to respond. Richard Hartwell was the CEO, a man whose decisions affected hundreds of employees, and he was apologizing to her directly. "I appreciate that," she said carefully, "but the people who owe me an apology are the ones who turned my personal life into entertainment." "Agreed, and they will apologize, formally and in writing, after we've completed our investigation." Richard's tone left no room for argument. "But as the leader of this company, I should have created a culture where this kind of behavior was unthinkable. That I didn't is my failure." Ethan had remained silent during this exchange, but now he spoke. "Richard runs a good company. Tonight was a failure of middle management, not leadership. With respect, Ethan, they're my middle managers. I hired them, I promoted them, I trusted them to maintain standards." Richard shook his head. "Tomorrow I'll be reviewing personnel files and performance evaluations. Some positions may be changing." The implication was clear. Christine, at minimum, was likely facing serious consequences. Possibly Brad and others who'd participated actively in the evening's cruelty. Rachel felt a complicated mix of emotions about that. Satisfaction that there would be accountability, but also a strange sadness that it had come to this. "I'll see you Monday, Richard," Ethan said, effectively ending the conversation. "Rachel, I'll walk you to your car if that's all right." She nodded, and they left the hotel together, stepping out into the cold December night. The parking lot was half empty now, most of the party guests having fled. Their breath made small clouds in the freezing air. "I'm that way," Rachel said, pointing toward the far end of the lot where she'd been forced to park when she arrived late. "I'll walk with you." They moved through the rows of cars in silence, the muffled sounds of the city distant around them. Rachel's mind was churning, processing everything that had happened, everything that would happen next. Monday would be complicated. People would whisper, speculate, judge. Some would resent her for being part of the reason their colleagues got in trouble. Others would pity her for being publicly humiliated. But she'd survived worse. She'd survived her ex-husband walking out when Maya was 2, leaving her with a toddler and a mortgage and no support. She'd survived the judgment of her own family, who thought she should have tried harder to make the marriage work. She'd survived rebuilding her entire life from scratch, while maintaining her career and raising a daughter who deserved better than the hand she'd been dealt. She could survive this too. "Here," she said, stopping beside her sensible sedan, 6 years old, reliable, nothing special but hers, and paid off. Ethan stood a respectful distance away, hands in his pockets against the cold. "Drive safe. The roads might be icy." "You too." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for what you did in there, for standing up when you didn't have to." "I did have to," Ethan said simply. "I couldn't not." "Does that make sense?" It did. Some things you couldn't walk away from, couldn't ignore, couldn't pretend weren't happening even when it would be easier to stay silent. Rachel unlocked her car and opened the driver's door, but she didn't get in yet. There was something else she needed to say, though she wasn't quite sure how to phrase it. "The seating chart," she said finally. "Christine was wrong about a lot of things tonight, but she wasn't entirely wrong about us having things in common." Ethan tilted his head slightly, listening. "I mean, we are both single parents. We do both understand what it's like to balance everything alone, and maybe—" She paused, feeling her way through the thought. "Maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing to know someone who gets that. Not romantically," she added quickly. "Just as someone who understands." "Like a friend," Ethan said. "Like a friend," Rachel agreed, relieved he understood. "I'd like that." He pulled out his phone. "Can I give you my number, in case you ever need someone to talk to who won't judge you for leaving work early or turning down overtime because you have a kid to pick up?" They exchanged numbers, the transaction feeling oddly significant given the circumstances that had brought them together. Rachel saved his contact under Ethan, Facilities, and showed him. He smiled. "That's still technically accurate, even if everyone knows the truth now." "It's who you were when you stood up for me," Rachel said. "That matters more than titles." She got into her car, started the engine, waited for Ethan to step back before pulling out of the parking space. In her rearview mirror, she watched him walk toward his own vehicle, a truck that looked well used and practical, exactly the kind of vehicle someone in Facilities would drive. The drive home took 20 minutes through quiet streets decorated with holiday lights. Rachel's mind wandered over the evening, picking at details, examining moments from different angles. By Monday, Everyone at work would know what had happened. The story would spread and mutate, details changing with each retelling. She'd become part of office lore, the woman who was humiliated at the holiday party before the secret billionaire owner revealed himself and shut everything down. She could live with that. She'd been called worse things. The babysitter, a college student named Emma who lived 2 houses down, looked up from her textbook when Rachel came in. "How was the party?" Emma asked, gathering her things. "Complicated," Rachel said, pulling out her wallet to pay Emma for the evening. "But it's over now." "Maya was great. She finished her homework, we had popcorn, and she showed me the picture she drew for you. It's on the fridge." After Emma left, Rachel locked the door and set her purse on the hall table. The house was quiet, warm, familiar. She walked into the kitchen and found Maya's drawing held up by a magnet shaped like an apple, a crayon rendering of 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands under a rainbow. "That's you and me," a sleepy voice said from the doorway. Rachel turned to find Maya standing there in her unicorn pajamas, rubbing her eyes, her dark hair tangled from sleep. "Baby, what are you doing up? It's late." "I wanted to wait for you. Did they have good dessert?" Rachel thought about the chocolate mousse she'd barely touched, about everything that had happened after dessert was served. "They had chocolate mousse, but I didn't get to finish mine. Come here." Maya patted across the kitchen and wrapped her arms around Rachel's waist, pressing her face against Rachel's stomach. Rachel smoothed her daughter's hair, breathing in the smell of children's shampoo and innocence. "Mama, are you sad?" "No, sweetheart, I'm not sad. Why do you ask?" "You have your sad face." Rachel knelt down to Maya's level, cupping her daughter's face in both hands. "I'm not sad. I'm actually proud." "Proud of what?" How could she explain this to a 7-year-old? How could she convey the complexity of standing up for yourself, of refusing to accept cruelty, of finding unexpected allies in unlikely places? "I'm proud that I didn't run away when things got hard," Rachel said simply. "And I'm proud to be your mama." Maya smiled, the kind of uncomplicated joy that only children could manage. "I'm proud to be your daughter too. Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" "It's Saturday tomorrow. We can have anything you want. Pancakes shaped like unicorns." "I don't know if I can manage unicorn-shaped pancakes, baby. How about stars?" "Okay, stars are almost as good as unicorns." Maya yawned, big enough that her jaw cracked slightly. "I'm sleepy now." Rachel carried her daughter back to bed, tucking her in with the careful precision of a ritual performed thousands of times. She kissed Maya's forehead, straightened the covers, made sure the nightlight was on, and the door was open just the right amount. "Love you, Mama," Maya murmured, already halfway back to sleep. "Love you more than all the stars," Rachel whispered back. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her daughter sleep, feeling the weight of everything she carried settle back onto her shoulders. But it felt different somehow. Lighter, maybe, or just more manageable now that she knew she wasn't carrying it entirely alone. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was before she opened it. "Made it home safe. Lucas is asleep, but his dinosaur fell on the floor. Crisis averted. Hope Maya wasn't up too late waiting." Rachel smiled and typed back. "Home safe. Maya drew us a picture. She's asleep now. Thank you again for tonight." The response came quickly. "Nothing to thank me for. See you Monday." Monday, 2 days away. 2 days to prepare for whatever came next, to steel herself against whispers and stares and the uncomfortable aftermath of public drama. But she'd faced worse with less support. Rachel changed into comfortable clothes, washed her face, went through the mundane rituals of getting ready for bed. But sleep felt far away, her mind too active, too full of thoughts spinning in circles. She made chamomile tea and sat at the kitchen table, Maya's drawing still on the fridge, the house settling into its nighttime quiet around her. Through the window, she could see holiday lights twinkling on neighboring houses, cheerful in the darkness. Her phone buzzed again. Not Ethan this time, but Christine. "Rachel, I need to talk to you. Can you call me?" Rachel stared at the message for a long moment. She could ignore it, delete it, pretend she never saw it. But something made her tap Christine's number, raise the phone to her ear, listen to it ring. "Rachel?" Christine's voice was rough, like she'd been crying. "Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't." "I don't blame you." A pause, the sound of Christine taking a shaky breath. I need to apologize. What I did tonight was inexcusable. I humiliated you publicly. I violated your privacy. I treated you like you were less than human. And I'm sorry. The apology sounded genuine, but Rachel had heard enough hollow apologies in her life to be wary. Why did you do it? I don't know. That's the truth. I don't have a good reason. I thought it would be funny, I guess. I thought people would laugh and you'd just deal with it. I didn't think about how it would feel from your perspective. Christine's voice cracked. But that's not an excuse. I should have thought about it. I should have been better. Rachel took a sip of tea, letting the silence stretch. She wasn't going to make this easy. I'm probably going to be fired, Christine continued. Richard called me after the party ended. I have a meeting with him and HR on Monday morning. And honestly, I deserve it. What I did was harassment. I created a hostile work environment. I betrayed the trust he placed in me as a manager. Yes, Rachel said simply. You did all of those things. I know, and I know an apology doesn't fix it. I know you have every right to hate me, but I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did and how wrong it was, and I'm going to have to live with that. Rachel set down her tea, staring at the drawings and papers held to her fridge by mismatched magnets, the physical evidence of the life she'd built for herself and Maya, despite everything. I don't hate you, Christine, she said quietly. I'm angry, and I'm hurt, and I don't trust you anymore. But I don't hate you. That's more grace than I deserve. Maybe, but I don't have the energy to hate you. I have a daughter to raise and a job to do and a life to live. Hating you would just take up space I don't have to spare. Christine made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. You're a better person than I am. I'm just tired, Rachel said, tired of carrying anger around, tired of letting other people's cruelty define my experience. So I'm choosing to let this go, not for you, but for me. I understand. And Rachel, for what it's worth, you're really good at your job. The work you did on the Jameson account last quarter was exceptional. I should have told you that instead of judging you for leaving early to pick up your daughter. The compliment felt strange coming now, after everything, but Rachel appreciated it nonetheless. Thank you. I'll let you go. I'm sure you have better things to do than talk to me. But thank you for picking up and for listening. After Christine hung up, Rachel sat with her cooling tea, processing the conversation. The apology didn't erase what had happened, didn't undo the humiliation, or make the evening any less painful. But it was something, an acknowledgement, at least, that what had been done was wrong. Her phone buzzed one more time. Ethan again. Couldn't sleep, thinking about tomorrow, about Monday, about how things change and stay the same all at once. Rachel understood that feeling completely. She typed back, Same. It's strange knowing nothing is different, but everything is different. Exactly. Lucas will still want dinosaur pancakes for breakfast. But I'll go to work and everyone will know who I am, and that changes the dynamic entirely. Maya wants star-shaped pancakes. I'm not sure I can deliver on that promise. Cookie cutters. Cut them out after cooking. Works every time. That's actually genius. How did you figure that out? Trial and error. Many errors. Lucas has opinions about pancake shapes. Rachel smiled despite herself, despite the lateness of the hour and the emotional weight of the evening. There was something comforting about this exchange, this mundane discussion of parenting challenges with someone who actually understood. Get some sleep, she typed. Monday will come whether we're ready or not. Wise words. Good night, Rachel. Good night, Ethan. She finished her tea, rinsed the cup, turned off the kitchen light. In her bedroom, she set her phone on the nightstand and climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. Through the wall, she could hear Maya's soft breathing, the gentle sound of her daughter sleeping peacefully. Tomorrow would bring star-shaped pancakes and lazy Saturday morning cartoons. Monday would bring consequences and uncomfortable conversations and the beginning of whatever came next. But tonight was over, survived, behind her. Rachel closed her eyes and let sleep take her, dreamless and deep. Saturday morning arrived with winter sunlight streaming through Rachel's bedroom window, cold and bright. She woke to the sound of Maya singing in her room, some made-up song about unicorns and rainbows that had no discernible melody but infinite enthusiasm. For a moment, Rachel lay still, letting the normalcy of it wash over her. Whatever had happened last night, whatever would happen Monday, this morning was just another Saturday with her daughter. Mama! Maya appeared in the doorway, already dressed in mismatched clothes she'd clearly chosen herself. Purple leggings with orange polka dots and a green shirt with a sparkly butterfly. You promised pancakes! I did promise pancakes, Rachel agreed, pushing herself up. Give me 5 minutes to wake up properly, okay? 5 minutes? Maya agreed solemnly, then ruined the effect by adding, but hurry because I'm very hungry and might die of starvation. So dramatic, Rachel said, but she smiled as she got out of bed. 20 minutes later, they were in the kitchen together, Maya perched on a stool at the counter while Rachel mixed batter. She'd found the cookie cutters in the back of a drawer, stars, hearts, and circles, exactly as Ethan had suggested. How was the boring work party? Maya asked, swinging her legs. Rachel poured batter onto the griddle, watching it spread and bubble. How did you explain to a 7-year-old that the boring work party had turned into a public confrontation that would change the dynamics of your workplace forever? It was interesting, she said carefully. I met someone new, a dad who has a son about your age. Does he like unicorns? I don't think so. He likes dinosaurs. Maya wrinkled her nose. Dinosaurs are okay, but unicorns are better. Is the dad nice? Yes, sweetheart, he's very nice. Good, you should have nice friends. Maya watched the pancakes cook with intense focus. Are those ready yet? Rachel flipped them, revealing golden brown undersides. Almost. Go get the syrup from the pantry. While Maya rummaged in the pantry, Rachel's phone buzzed on the counter. A text from her sister, Lauren, who lived 2 states away and had impeccable timing for checking in at complicated moments. Hey sis, just thinking about you. How was the holiday party? Meet any eligible bachelors? Rachel almost laughed at the irony. She typed back, met someone. It's complicated. Call you later? The response was immediate. What? You can't drop that and not explain. Call me when Maya's distracted. The pancakes came off the griddle, perfect and fluffy. Rachel used the star-shaped cookie cutter to punch out shapes, exactly as Ethan had suggested, and it worked beautifully. Maya's face lit up when Rachel plated them. They're perfect. You're the best pancake maker in the whole world. I had help, Rachel said, thinking of late-night text messages and parenting advice from an unexpected source. Someone told me the cookie cutter trick. Who? The dad I mentioned, the one with the son who likes dinosaurs. Maya considered this while drowning her pancakes in syrup. You should invite them over to play. I could teach the dinosaur boy about unicorns. Maybe someday, Rachel said, though the thought of navigating that kind of social situation felt overwhelming. Everything with Ethan existed in this strange space between colleagues and friends, complicated by the events of Friday night and the professional consequences that would unfold Monday. After breakfast, they spent the morning doing the kinds of things that filled their Saturdays, laundry and grocery shopping and cleaning Maya's room, which somehow always looked like a tornado had passed through despite Rachel's best efforts. Normal, mundane, grounding. The kind of routine that kept the world from spinning too fast. But Rachel's phone kept buzzing with messages that reminded her the world was spinning whether she acknowledged it or not. From Emma, the babysitter. My roommate's mom works at Hartwell. She said something crazy happened at the party. Are you okay? From a coworker in finance, Rachel, I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry I didn't say anything. I should have stood up for you. From another coworker, is it true that the maintenance guy is actually a billionaire? This is wild. Rachel ignored most of them, but the steady stream made it clear that the story was spreading beyond the party attendees. By Monday, everyone would know. Everyone would have opinions, questions, judgments. She called Lauren while Maya was absorbed in an animated movie, curling up on the couch with a cup of coffee and preparing for the conversation she knew was coming. Okay, explain, Lauren said immediately. You met someone complicated? Since when do you meet anyone? You work and parent? And that's basically your entire life. Thanks for that summary of my sad existence. You know what I mean. So who is he? Rachel took a deep breath and launched into the story. The seating chart, the public humiliation, Ethan's quiet support, and then the revelation that changed everything. Lauren listened without interrupting, which was remarkable given her usual tendency to jump in with commentary. Holy shit, Lauren said when Rachel finished. That's like something out of a movie. The secret billionaire undercover in his own company? He's not a billionaire, I don't think. I don't actually know what he's worth, and it's not relevant anyway. It's a little relevant, but okay, forget the money. He stood up for you in front of everyone, knowing it would have consequences. He stood up for both of us, Rachel corrected. It wasn't about me specifically. It was about the principle. Right, the principle. Lauren's tone suggested she wasn't buying that explanation entirely. And then you exchanged numbers and texted about pancakes. He gave me advice about cookie cutters. It was helpful. Rachel, listen to me very carefully. This man defended your dignity, revealed his secret identity like some corporate superhero, and then texted you parenting tips at midnight. Do you understand what that means? That he's a nice person who also happens to be a single parent? Lauren groaned. You're being deliberately obtuse. He likes you. He doesn't like me. We barely know each other. We just happened to be thrown together by a cruel seating chart and shared an unpleasant experience. And then kept talking afterward. And then texted. And then gave each other advice about pancakes. Lauren paused. When was the last time you let yourself consider the possibility that someone might be interested in you? Rachel felt her chest tighten. I don't have time for this conversation. Which is exactly why we need to have it. You've been alone for 5 years. 5 years of throwing everything into being a mom and building your career and never, ever letting yourself want anything for yourself. I have Maya. I have my job. That's enough. Is it? Lauren's voice gentled. I'm not saying you need a man to be complete or any of that patriarchal garbage. I'm saying you're allowed to want companionship. You're allowed to be lonely. You're allowed to let someone in. Even if I wanted to, which I'm not saying I do, it's complicated. We work together. Sort of. He's technically my boss's boss's boss. And the entire thing started with public humiliation. That's not exactly a foundation for anything. True, but it's also something, and you haven't had something in a very long time. After they hung up, Rachel sat with her cooling coffee, staring at the television where animated characters sang about friendship and adventure. Maya was completely absorbed, mouthing along with words she'd memorized from countless viewings. Was Lauren right? Had Rachel closed herself off so completely that she couldn't recognize genuine connection when it appeared? Or was she being sensible, protecting herself and Maya from the complications that came with letting someone new into their carefully balanced life? Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. Lucas wants to know if star pancakes are better than dinosaur pancakes. I told him it's not a competition, but he's insistent on ranking. Rachel smiled despite herself and typed back, Maya believes unicorn pancakes would beat both, but she's willing to compromise on stars. Lucas says dinosaurs are scientifically proven to be cooler than unicorns because they actually existed. Maya says unicorns exist in our hearts, and that's more important than fossils. I can't argue with that logic. Neither can I, which is how I end up with unicorn everything. There was a pause, and then, this is nice, just talking about kid stuff with someone who gets it. Rachel stared at those words, feeling something shift in her chest. Yes, she typed back. It is. The rest of Saturday passed quietly, but Sunday brought a new complication. Rachel was folding laundry while Maya practiced writing her spelling words when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. Rachel Moore, this is David Chen from Cole Industries. We met briefly Friday night. Rachel's stomach dropped. Yes, I remember. I'm calling because Mr. Cole wanted me to reach out to you personally. There's going to be a formal investigation starting Monday into the events at the holiday party. HR will need to interview you about what happened. I wanted to give you advance notice and let you know that you're not in any trouble. You're a witness, not a subject of the investigation. I understand. The interview will probably take about an hour. We'll ask you to describe what happened, who was involved, what was said. It may be uncomfortable to revisit, but your testimony is important for ensuring appropriate action is taken. David's voice was professional, but not unkind. If you need any accommodations, time off, a support person present during the interview, anything, please let me know. I'll be fine, Rachel said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. When should I expect to be called? Probably Monday afternoon. We're starting with the people who were most directly involved. You, Mr. Cole, and the employees who participated in the harassment. After David hung up, Rachel sat with the phone in her lap, the pile of unfolded laundry forgotten. An investigation, formal interviews, official consequences. This was really happening, the full machinery of corporate accountability grinding into motion. She texted Ethan, "David Chen just called. They're doing formal interviews Monday." The response came quickly. "I know. I'm sorry you have to go through this again. If you need anything, let me know." "Will you be there? At the interview?" "No, I'll give my statement separately. They want to avoid any appearance of influence or coordination between witnesses." That made sense, but it also meant Rachel would be facing this alone. Walking into an HR conference room, recounting the evening's humiliation to strangers who would be taking notes and recording her words for the official record. She could do this. She'd done harder things. But that didn't make it any less daunting. Sunday evening, after Maya was in bed, Rachel laid out her clothes for Monday with extra care. She chose a gray suit that was professional without being severe, paired with a blue blouse that Maya had once said made her eyes pretty. Armor for whatever the day would bring. She tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't quiet, running through possible scenarios and conversations. What if people blamed her? What if they thought she'd overreacted, that she should have just laughed it off? What if her standing up for herself, or rather Ethan standing up for both of them, cost other people their jobs and they resented her for it? Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for chamomile tea. Her phone was on the counter, and she found herself opening her messages with Ethan, reading back through their exchanges. Pancake advice and parent commiseration and small moments of connection that felt significant out of proportion to their brevity. She typed without letting herself overthink it. "Can't sleep. Tomorrow feels very large." The response came almost immediately. "Same. Lucas had a nightmare, so I'm up anyway. Tomorrow is large, but we've both handled large things before. Alone, though, we handled them alone. Not this time." Those 3 words settled something in Rachel's chest. Not this time. She didn't have to carry this alone, didn't have to face the aftermath without support. Someone understood. Someone cared. "Thank you," she typed, "for everything. For Friday night, and for this. Nothing to thank me for. Get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow we just have to get through it, 1 hour at a time." 1 hour at a time, Rachel repeated to herself as she climbed back into bed. It was a strategy she'd learned as a new single mother, overwhelmed by the enormity of rebuilding her life. Don't think about the whole day, don't think about the whole week. Just get through the next hour, then the next, then the next. She could do that. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of weather that matched Rachel's mood perfectly. Maya was cranky about getting dressed, cranky about breakfast, cranky about everything in the way she sometimes got when she picked up on Rachel's stress without understanding its source. "Why are you sad-faced again?" Maya asked over her cereal. "I'm not sad, baby, just thinking about work stuff." "Is it boring work stuff or scary work stuff?" Rachel paused, struck by her daughter's perceptiveness. "A little bit scary, but I'll be okay." "Do you want to bring Mr. Snuffles?" Maya offered, holding up her favorite stuffed elephant. "He makes me feel better when I'm scared." "That's very sweet, but I think Mr. Snuffles should stay here with you. He has an important job protecting your room." "Okay, but if you get too scared, you can call me and I'll tell you it's going to be fine." "Deal," Rachel said, her heart squeezing with love for this small person who was wise beyond her years. The drive to work felt longer than usual, every red light a small eternity. Rachel had arrived early, deliberately early, wanting to get to her desk before the office filled up, before she had to face the curiosity and questions she knew would be waiting. But the parking lot was already half full when she pulled in, and as she walked through the lobby, she could feel eyes on her. The security guard at the desk, usually friendly and chatty, gave her a solemn nod instead of his usual greeting. The receptionist looked up, then quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in her computer screen. Rachel kept walking, her heels clicking on the polished floor, her head high even as her stomach churned. The elevator ride to the 5th floor felt interminable, classical music playing softly while she stared at the floor numbers climbing. When the doors opened, she stepped into a finance department that had gone conspicuously quiet. People were at their desks, but instead of the usual Monday morning bustle, coffee being made, weekend stories being shared, the gradual ramp up into the work week, there was an unnatural hush. She walked to her cubicle, aware of sidelong glances and hastily averted eyes. No one said good morning. No one acknowledged her at all. It was like being invisible, except she could feel their awareness of her like static electricity in the air. Rachel set down her bag, turned on her computer, and took a deep breath. She could do this, 1 hour at a time. Her email inbox was full. Mostly work-related messages, but buried among them were several personal notes, from colleagues apologizing for not speaking up, from people asking if she was okay, from a few offering support in vague, non-committal ways that wouldn't cost them anything politically. She was reading through them when a shadow fell across her cubicle entrance. She looked up to find Marcus Chen from accounting, one of the few people she'd always gotten along with. "Hey, Rachel," he said quietly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry about Friday. I saw what was happening and I should have said something. I didn't, and that was wrong." The apology was so direct, so genuine, that Rachel felt tears prickling at her eyes. "Thank you, Marcus. That means a lot. If you need anything this week, someone to eat lunch with, someone to run interference with the gossip, I'm here, okay?" "Okay." After Marcus left, 2 more people stopped by her cubicle with similar messages. Small gestures, but they helped. Not everyone had participated in Friday's cruelty. Not everyone thought what had happened was acceptable. At 10 o'clock, her phone rang. The HR extension. "Rachel Moore? This is Jennifer Wu from Human Resources. We're ready for your interview whenever you can come down to the 2nd floor. Conference room B. I'll be right there." Rachel saved her work, locked her computer, and made the long walk to the elevators. Her hands were shaking slightly as she pressed the button for the 2nd floor. This was it. The formal reckoning. Conference room B was sterile and windowless, with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. Jennifer Wu was there along with another HR representative Rachel didn't recognize and someone from legal. They all stood when she entered, offering handshakes and strained professional smiles. "Thank you for coming, Rachel," Jennifer said. "Please, have a seat. Can we get you anything? Water? Coffee? Water would be good." Once they were all settled, Jennifer explained the process. They would ask questions about Friday evening. Everything would be recorded and transcribed. Rachel could take breaks if needed. She could have a representative present if she wished, though most employees didn't feel that was necessary. "I'm okay," Rachel said. "Let's just get through this." And so she recounted it all. The seating chart, the jokes and whispers, the way Christine had orchestrated the entire situation, the escalating comments from Brad and Melissa and others, the feeling of being on display, of being reduced to entertainment, Ethan's quiet support in the hallway, the confrontation at the table, the revelation on stage. She tried to be factual, to describe what happened without editorializing, but her voice shook when she talked about the moment she'd escaped to the hallway, about feeling humiliated and powerless. "Can you identify everyone who participated in making comments?" the legal representative asked. Rachel named names. Christine, obviously. Brad and Melissa. 3 or 4 others from their table. A couple people from nearby tables who joined in the commentary. "And in your assessment, was this behavior isolated to Friday evening or part of a broader pattern?" Rachel paused, considering. "I've experienced smaller incidents before. Comments about leaving early for school pickup. Assumptions that I'm not as committed because I'm a single parent. But Friday was different. It was public and deliberate and cruel in a way the other incidents weren't." They asked more questions. About specific comments. About whether she'd reported previous incidents. About how the experience had affected her. An hour turned into 90 minutes. Rachel's water glass was refilled twice. Finally, Jennifer closed her notebook. "I think we have everything we need. Thank you for being so forthcoming, Rachel. I know this wasn't easy. What happens now?" "We complete our interviews with all parties involved. Then we prepare a report for senior leadership with recommendations for disciplinary action. The process should be complete by the end of the week. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you go back to your normal duties. If anyone harasses you or retaliates in any way, you report it to me immediately." Jennifer's expression was serious. "We take this very seriously, Rachel. What happened Friday was completely unacceptable, and there will be consequences." Rachel left the conference room feeling drained, like she'd run a marathon. The emotional labor of reliving that evening, of naming names and describing cruelty in clinical detail, had taken more out of her than she'd expected. She stopped in the bathroom before heading back upstairs, splashing cold water on her face and taking several deep breaths. In the mirror, she looked tired but intact, still standing, still here. When she returned to her desk, there was a sticky note on her monitor in handwriting she didn't recognize. "Proud of you, E." Rachel looked around, but there was no sign of Ethan. He must have been here while she was in the interview, must have left the note and disappeared before she returned. The small gesture steadied her, reminded her that she wasn't alone in this. The afternoon crawled by. Rachel tried to focus on work, a quarterly report that needed finishing, expense reconciliations that couldn't wait, but her mind kept wandering. What were other people saying in their interviews? What would the final report conclude? Would Friday's perpetrators actually face meaningful consequences, or would this all blow over with a slap on the wrist and mandatory training that everyone would sleep through? At 3 o'clock, word spread through the office like wildfire. Christine had been escorted out of the building. Not fired, not yet, but placed on administrative leave pending the investigation's conclusion. Her office was being packed up by HR, her computer access revoked. Rachel watched through the glass walls as Christine's belongings were loaded into boxes. Part of her felt vindicated. Part of her felt sad. Mostly she felt tired. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. "Finished my interview. How did yours go?" "Exhausting, but done. I heard about Christine." "First of several, I imagine. Brad and Melissa are meeting with HR now. How are you holding up?" There was a pause before his response came. "Honestly, not great. I thought confronting this would feel better than it does. Instead, I just feel like I destroyed people's lives." Rachel understood that feeling, the weight of consequences, even deserved ones. You didn't destroy anything. They made choices. They're facing the results of those choices. "I know. Doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." Another pause, then, "Can I ask you something potentially inappropriate?" Rachel's heart rate picked up. "Yes? Do you want to get coffee after work? Somewhere away from here where we can just talk without worrying about who's watching?" It was such a simple request, but it felt momentous given everything happening around them. Coffee with Ethan would be noticed. People would talk. It would fuel speculation and gossip and judgment. But Rachel found she didn't care. "Yes," she typed. "I'd like that." They agreed to meet at a coffee shop 15 minutes from the office, somewhere neither of them usually went. Rachel left work at exactly 5 o'clock, not rushing, but not lingering either. She called the babysitter from her car, arranging for Emma to stay an extra hour with Maya. The coffee shop was warm and crowded with after-work traffic, people in business clothes unwinding over espresso and pastries. Rachel spotted Ethan in a back corner, already there with 2 cups in front of him. "I took a guess," he said as she approached. "Black coffee with 1 sugar? How did you know?" "You had coffee at the party. I noticed what you added to it before everything went sideways." Rachel slid into the seat across from him, accepting the cup. The coffee was exactly right. Not too hot, not too sweet, perfect for someone who needed comfort more than caffeine. For a moment they just sat there, 2 people who'd been through something intense together, not quite sure how to navigate what came next. "This is strange," Ethan said finally, "sitting here like normal people having coffee when everything feels so abnormal." "Everything is abnormal," Rachel agreed, "but coffee helps." He smiled, and she realized it was the first real smile she'd seen from him. Not the careful, controlled expression he wore at work, but something genuine and unguarded. "I meant what I said in my text," he told her. "I'm proud of you. For speaking up to HR, for not running away, for handling all of this with so much grace." "I don't feel graceful. I feel like I'm barely holding it together." That's what grace looks like sometimes, holding it together when everything in you wants to fall apart. They talked for an hour, conversation flowing easily now that they were away from Hartwell and Associates and all its complications. Ethan told her about Lucas's school struggles, about the challenges of parenting a child with anxiety, about the guilt that came with working long hours while knowing his son needed more of his time than he could give. Rachel shared about Maya, about the particular heartbreak of watching her daughter navigate a world that didn't always make space for complicated family situations, about parent-teacher conferences where she was the only single parent in the room, about birthday parties where Maya was the only one who didn't arrive with 2 parents in tow. "Does it get easier?" Ethan asked. "The single parent thing?" "Yes and no," Rachel said honestly. Some things get easier because you learn systems and routines, but some things stay hard because you're still doing everything alone. Except maybe we don't have to be completely alone anymore, Ethan said quietly. Maybe that's one good thing that came out of Friday, finding someone who actually understands. Rachel met his eyes across the small table, seeing her own exhaustion and hope reflected back at her. Maybe, she agreed. When she finally left to pick up Maya, the evening felt different somehow, lighter despite everything. She had coffee with a friend. She talked about her life with someone who got it, and tomorrow she'd go back to work and face whatever came next. But she wouldn't be facing it entirely alone. That was something. That was enough. The rest of the week unfolded in a strange rhythm of normalcy, punctuated by reminders that everything had fundamentally changed. Rachel went to work each day, completed her assignments, attended meetings. But the atmosphere at Hartwell and Associates had shifted in ways both subtle and obvious. Christine's empty office stood as a silent testament to consequences. Her nameplate had been removed from the door, her desk cleared of personal items. People walked past quickly, as if the space itself was contaminated with bad judgment. By Wednesday, Brad and Melissa had also been placed on administrative leave. Their departures created gaps in the organizational chart that everyone noticed but few discussed openly. The whispers followed Rachel everywhere. Not malicious anymore, but curious, speculative. She'd become a figure of interest rather than mockery, which was an improvement but still exhausting. People wanted to know what she'd said in her interview, what she thought would happen, whether she'd talked to Ethan Cole since the party. She deflected most questions with practiced professionalism, but the constant attention wore on her. Thursday afternoon, Jennifer Wu called her back to HR. Nothing to worry about, Jennifer assured her when Rachel's face went pale. I just wanted to give you an update before the official announcements tomorrow. They sat in the same conference room where Rachel had given her statement. Jennifer pulled out a folder, opening it to reveal what looked like an executive summary. The investigation is complete, Jennifer said. Based on witness testimony and our review of company policies, we've determined that Friday's incident constituted harassment and creation of a hostile work environment. Multiple employees violated our code of conduct. Rachel's hands were clenched in her lap. What are the consequences? Christine Valdez is being terminated, effective immediately. Her behavior was egregious and demonstrated a fundamental failure of leadership. Brad Morrison and Melissa Kwan are receiving formal written warnings and 60-day suspensions without pay. 4 other employees are receiving written warnings and mandatory retraining. Jennifer paused. Additionally, we're implementing new policies around workplace conduct and respect. All managers will undergo sensitivity training, and we're creating better reporting mechanisms for harassment. It was more than Rachel had expected. Real consequences, not just lip service. She should have felt relieved, vindicated even. Instead, she felt hollow. Christine has 3 kids, Rachel heard herself say. She's the primary breadwinner in her family. Jennifer's expression softened. I know this isn't easy, but her actions had consequences, and she knew better. As a manager, she had a responsibility to create a safe environment for her team. She violated that trust in a very public way. I know, Rachel trailed off, not sure how to articulate the complicated mix of emotions churning through her. Justice felt heavier than she'd anticipated. You can feel bad for her and still know that what happened was necessary, Jennifer said gently. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. After leaving HR, Rachel found herself walking to the facilities office on the first floor, a part of the building she'd never had reason to visit before. It was tucked away near the loading dock, a utilitarian space with concrete floors and metal shelves stocked with supplies. A young man at the front desk looked up in surprise when she entered. Can I help you? I'm looking for Ethan Cole. The young man's eyes widened slightly. Everyone knew who Ethan was now, even if they were still trying to reconcile the maintenance worker they'd seen with the company owner he'd turned out to be. He's in the back workshop. I can get him. It's fine. I'll wait. She sat on a bench near the door, surrounded by the smell of machine oil and cleaning supplies. It was strange being here, in this space that existed outside the corporate polish of the upper floors. This was where Ethan had spent his days for 3 months, invisible to the people whose company he owned. He emerged a few minutes later, wiping his hands on a rag, his work shirt smudged with grease. When he saw Rachel, surprise crossed his face, followed quickly by concern. Everything okay? Can we talk somewhere private? He led her to a small office barely big enough for a desk and 2 chairs. The walls were covered with maintenance schedules and equipment manuals. Ethan closed the door and leaned against the desk, studying her face. What happened? HR just gave me the results of the investigation. Christine's fired. Brad and Melissa are suspended for 2 months without pay. Others got written warnings. Ethan nodded slowly. I heard. Richard called me an hour ago to go over everything before the official announcement tomorrow. I feel terrible, Rachel said, the words tumbling out. I know I shouldn't. I know they deserved consequences. But Christine lost her job because of me, and I can't stop thinking about her kids, her family, how she's going to explain this to them. It's not because of you, Ethan said firmly. It's because of her choices. She created this situation, Rachel. She weaponized your personal life for entertainment. She violated company policy and basic human decency. Those consequences are on her, not you. But if I hadn't been there, if you hadn't stood up, then she would have done it to someone else eventually. People like Christine don't suddenly develop empathy. They keep pushing boundaries until someone stops them. He moved to sit in the chair beside her rather than across the desk, closing the distance between them. You didn't cause this. You were the victim who had the courage not to stay silent. Rachel wiped at her eyes, frustrated by the tears that kept threatening. Why does doing the right thing feel so awful? Because you're a good person. Because you understand that even people who do wrong things are still people with families and lives that get disrupted by consequences. Ethan handed her a tissue from a box on the desk. But that doesn't mean the consequences were wrong. Sometimes the right thing hurts. They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the facility's office muted through the closed door. Rachel felt the weight of the week settling on her shoulders, the accumulated stress of being watched, judged, processed through corporate machinery. I had coffee with my ex-husband yesterday, she said suddenly, Maya's father. He wanted to know what was going on because apparently someone he knows saw the story about the party on social media. Ethan's expression shifted, became more guarded. How did that go? About as well as you'd expect. He wanted to know if this would affect Maya, if people were talking about our family, if I'd considered how this publicity might impact his reputation. Rachel laughed bitterly. His reputation. The man who walked out on his daughter when she was 2 is worried about his reputation. Did you tell him to go to hell? I wanted to. Instead, I explained calmly and rationally that I didn't ask to be publicly humiliated, that I handled the situation with as much dignity as possible, and that if he was actually concerned about Maya's well-being, he could start paying child support on time. She paused. That last part wasn't very calm or rational. Sounds pretty reasonable to me. He hung up on me. So that went well. Rachel slouched in her chair, exhaustion catching up with her. I'm tired, Ethan. I'm tired of defending myself, tired of explaining, tired of feeling like I have to justify my existence to people who've already made up their minds about who I am. I know, but you only have to get through one more day of this week. Tomorrow, they make the official announcement. There'll be another round of gossip and speculation, and then over the weekend it'll start to fade. Next week will be easier. Promise? No, but I can hope really hard. That surprised a genuine laugh out of her, the first one she'd managed all week. Ethan smiled, looking pleased with himself. There, he said. That's better. You should laugh more. I used to laugh all the time, before everything got so complicated. Life with kids is always complicated, but it doesn't have to be joyless. He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. Come on, let me walk you back upstairs before people start wondering if I've kidnapped you. Would that be so bad? A kidnapping sounds restful right about now. I don't think kidnapping is generally considered restful. Also, it's illegal and would definitely complicate my employment situation. They took the stairs instead of the elevator, Ethan's way of avoiding the potential awkwardness of being trapped in a small space where anyone might see them together. It was a small consideration, but Rachel appreciated it. Everything about Ethan suggested thoughtfulness, an awareness of how actions might affect others. At the 5th floor landing, he paused before opening the door. Rachel, I want you to know something. Whatever happens with the investigation, whatever people say or think, you handled this with more grace than anyone had a right to expect. You didn't ask for this situation, but you didn't hide from it either. That takes courage. I didn't feel courageous. I felt terrified. Me? Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite being terrified. He held her gaze. You're stronger than you think. The words settled into Rachel's chest, warm and solid. She wanted to believe them, wanted to see herself the way Ethan seemed to see her, strong, courageous, worthy of respect. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything this week, for the texts and the coffee and just being there. That's what friends do. Friends. The word should have felt simple, uncomplicated, but standing in the stairwell with Ethan, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough to notice the faint scar above his left eyebrow, Rachel felt the inadequacy of the term. What they were becoming felt bigger than friendship, more complicated, weighted with potential and possibility. But neither of them said that. Instead, they just stood there for a heartbeat longer than necessary before Ethan stepped back and opened the door to the 5th floor. Friday morning arrived with an email from Richard Hartwell to all staff. The subject line read, "Important announcement regarding recent events," and Rachel's stomach clenched as she opened it. The email was carefully worded, professional but direct. It acknowledged that an incident had occurred at the holiday party involving harassment of employees. It outlined the investigation process and confirmed that disciplinary action had been taken, including terminations and suspensions. It emphasized Hartwell and Associates' commitment to maintaining a respectful workplace and announced upcoming training and policy changes. What it didn't include were names or specific details, but everyone knew anyway. Within an hour of the email going out, the full story had circulated through every department. Christine was gone. Brad and Melissa were suspended. Others had been disciplined. And at the center of it all were Rachel Moore and Ethan Cole, the single parents whose humiliation had triggered a reckoning. Rachel kept her head down and her door closed as much as possible, focusing on work with desperate intensity. But at 11 o'clock, Marcus knocked on her cubicle wall. "There's a meeting," he said quietly, "department-wide. Conference room in 5 minutes." The conference room was packed when Rachel arrived, every chair filled and people standing along the walls. The mood was tense, uncertain. Their department head, Susan Martinez, stood at the front with Jennifer Wu from HR beside her. "Thank you all for coming," Susan began. "I know this week has been difficult and confusing. I want to address some of what's happened and what it means for our department going forward." She spoke about Christine's termination, acknowledging that it left a leadership gap that would need to be filled. She talked about the importance of maintaining professional boundaries and treating colleagues with respect. She emphasized that harassment would not be tolerated regardless of whether it was framed as humor or team building. Then she did something Rachel hadn't expected. She looked directly at Rachel. "I also want to say that I'm sorry. Sorry that members of this department participated in behavior that made a colleague feel unsafe and disrespected. Sorry that it took an outside intervention for that behavior to be addressed. And sorry that anyone on my team ever felt they couldn't come forward about harassment without fearing consequences." The room went very quiet. Rachel felt dozens of eyes turned toward her, some sympathetic, some curious, some still judging. "Going forward," Susan continued, "my door is always open. If you experience or witness behavior that makes you uncomfortable, I want to know about it. We're going to do better. We have to do better." After the meeting dispersed, several colleagues approached Rachel directly. Some offered apologies for not speaking up. Others expressed support. A few asked questions that felt more like fishing for gossip than genuine concern, and Rachel shut those down quickly. By lunch, she was exhausted from the emotional labor of accepting apologies and deflecting questions. She grabbed her coat and headed outside, needing air and space and a break from the intensity of being the center of attention. The park across from the office building was mostly empty, the cold keeping people indoors. Rachel found a bench and sat, pulling her coat tight against the December wind. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle around her. "Mind if I join you?" She opened her eyes to find Ethan standing there with 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag that smelled like French fries. "How did you know I was here?" "Saw you leave the building. Figured you might need sustenance and company, in that order." He handed her a coffee and the bag. "Lunch. Nothing fancy, just burgers and fries from the food truck on the corner." They ate in comfortable silence, watching office workers hurry past on their lunch breaks. The food was greasy and perfect, exactly what Rachel needed after a morning of emotional intensity. "How's your day going?" she asked eventually. "Weird. I'm still technically working in facilities, but everyone knows who I am now, so people keep treating me like I'm inspecting them when I'm just trying to fix a broken toilet." He took a sip of coffee. "I miss being invisible." "Is that why you did it? The undercover thing? Because you wanted to see what the company was really like?" "Partly, but also because I wanted to understand the work from the ground up. You learn more about an organization by fixing its broken things than you do by sitting in executive meetings." He glanced at her. "Plus, I like working with my hands. It's satisfying in a way pushing papers never is. What happens now is that your cover's blown. I'll finish out the week in facilities, then transition back to a more traditional executive role. Work with Richard on implementing changes, oversee the restructuring, actually use my office for once." He didn't sound particularly enthusiastic about it. "The necessary stuff that's also incredibly boring. You could hire someone else to do the boring stuff." "I could, but that feels like shirking responsibility. I own this company. I should be involved in fixing its problems, not delegating them to someone else." Rachel studied him, this man who could have stayed comfortably wealthy and distant, but chose instead to get his hands dirty, understanding his own company's failures. There was an integrity to it that she found deeply attractive. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Yes?" "Why are you single? I mean, you're smart and kind and successful. You actually care about being a good father. Women must throw themselves at you." Ethan laughed, genuinely surprised. "That's definitely not what happens. Most women run screaming when they find out I have a kid with special needs who requires a lot of attention and care. The ones who stick around usually do it because they're interested in my bank account, not my actual life." That's depressing. That's reality. Dating as a single parent is hard enough. Dating as a single parent of a child with additional needs is nearly impossible. Most people don't want that level of complexity. He turned to look at her directly. "What about you? Why are you single?" Rachel considered how to answer honestly. "At first it was because I was too busy surviving. My ex left and I had to figure out how to support myself and Maya alone. Then it was because I was too tired. Working full-time and parenting alone doesn't leave much energy for dating. And now..." She trailed off. Now I think I'm scared. Scared of trusting someone again. Scared of letting someone close enough to hurt me, or worse, hurt Maya. Scared of discovering that I'm not enough, even when I'm giving everything I have." The words came out in a rush, more honest than she'd intended. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, "You're more than enough. Anyone who made you feel otherwise was wrong." Easy to say. True to believe. He shifted on the bench to face her more fully. "Rachel, I've watched you this week handle more pressure and scrutiny than most people deal with in a year. You've been gracious to people who didn't deserve it, honest when it would have been easier to stay quiet, and strong even when you felt like falling apart. That's not someone who's not enough. That's someone who's extraordinary." She felt tears threatening again and blinked them back. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you make star-shaped pancakes for your daughter. I know you worry about people even when they've hurt you. I know you show up and do the work even when it's hard. That tells me more about who you are than months of casual dating ever could." The moment stretched between them, weighted with things unsaid. Rachel was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how easy it would be to close the distance between them. But she held back, uncertain, afraid of complicating something that felt important by rushing it. "We should probably get back," she said finally, though she made no move to stand. "Probably," Ethan agreed, also not moving. They sat there a moment longer, watching their breath make clouds in the cold air, neither quite ready to return to the building and all its complications. Finally, Ethan stood and offered her his hand. "Come on, one more afternoon and then it's the weekend. We can both survive one more afternoon." The rest of Friday passed without incident. Rachel finished her quarterly report, responded to emails, participated in a budget meeting that ran long and accomplished little, normal work tasks that felt surreal given everything else happening. At 4 o'clock, her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Lucas wants to know if Maya would like to come over tomorrow for a play date. He's very insistent that she needs to understand why dinosaurs are scientifically superior to unicorns. Rachel stared at the message, her heart rate picking up. A playdate meant crossing a line from work colleagues who supported each other into actual friends whose children spent time together. It meant introducing Maya to Ethan and Lucas, creating connections that would be harder to untangle if things went wrong. But it also meant not being alone. It meant Maya having another child to play with, another parent who understood the particular challenges of single parenting. It meant taking a chance on something that scared her. She typed back, Maya will argue that unicorns are magically superior, which trumps scientific facts. But yes, she'd love to come over. What time? 10. We can do lunch after. Nothing fancy, just pizza and letting the kids tire each other out. Perfect. Text me your address. When Rachel told Maya that evening about the play date, her daughter's eyes lit up with excitement. The dinosaur boy? Really? Can I bring my unicorn collection to show him? Maybe just your favorite one or two. We don't want to overwhelm him. But Mama, he needs to understand that unicorns are the best. It's important education. Rachel laughed, pulling Maya into a hug. Okay, baby, you can bring your unicorns and educate him all you want. That night, after Maya was asleep, Rachel stood in her closet trying to decide what to wear to a child's playdate and feeling ridiculous about it. It was just a playdate. Just two single parents letting their kids socialize while they supervised. It didn't matter what she wore. She pulled out jeans and a soft sweater, casual and comfortable. Not trying too hard. Not sending signals she wasn't ready to send. Her phone buzzed. Ethan again. Thank you for saying yes. Lucas hasn't been this excited about meeting someone new in a long time. He's already planning his dinosaur presentation. Maya's planning her unicorn rebuttal. This could get competitive. Looking forward to it. Sleep well, Rachel. You too. She climbed into bed, her mind too active for sleep despite her exhaustion. Tomorrow would change things. She could feel it, the way you sense a storm coming before the clouds appear. Whatever fragile thing was building between her and Ethan would either strengthen or shatter based on how tomorrow went. The thought terrified her, but underneath the fear was something else. Anticipation, hope, the tentative possibility that maybe she didn't have to do everything alone anymore. That maybe letting someone in wouldn't end in disaster. That maybe, just maybe, she deserved something good after years of just surviving. Rachel closed her eyes and let herself imagine it. Not forever, not grand promises or romantic declarations, just tomorrow. Just pizza and dinosaurs and unicorns, and two kids playing while their parents watched. Just the possibility of connection, of friendship, of something more if they were brave enough to reach for it. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time, one moment of courage after another. She could do that. She would do that. Tomorrow. Saturday morning dawned bright and cold. The kind of winter day where everything looked sharper, clearer, as if the world had been scrubbed clean overnight. Rachel woke before her alarm, nerves already humming with anticipation. She lay there for a moment, listening to the quiet house, trying to talk herself down from the anxiety building in her chest. It was just a play date. Just two kids meeting while their parents supervised. Nothing to be nervous about. Except it wasn't just that. And she knew it. This was the first time she'd deliberately introduced Maya to someone from her personal life, the first time she'd crossed that boundary between work and home, professional and personal. And it was with Ethan, who'd somehow become important to her in the span of a week in ways she was still trying to understand. Mama! Maya burst into the room, already dressed in her favorite purple outfit with the sparkly unicorn on the front. Is it time to go yet? Rachel checked her phone. 7:30. They didn't need to leave for another 2 hours. Not yet, baby. We'll have breakfast first, then get ready. But I am ready, see? Maya spun around to show off her outfit, complete with mismatched socks. One with rainbows, one with hearts. I see that. You look beautiful. But Lucas probably isn't even awake yet. Maya's face fell slightly, then brightened again. Can I pack my unicorns while we wait? Sure, but remember, just your two favorites. Rachel followed her daughter to her room, watching as Maya carefully selected which unicorns would make the journey. She settled on Sparkle, a purple plush unicorn with a glittery horn, and Rainbow, a smaller unicorn with a multicolored mane. These are the best ones, Maya explained seriously. Sparkle is good at making friends, and Rainbow knows lots of facts about why unicorns are special. Perfect choices. They had pancakes for breakfast, Regular round ones this time, not stars. And Rachel let Maya chatter about all the things she wanted to tell Lucas about unicorns. The nervous energy radiating off her daughter mirrored Rachel's own anxiety, though for different reasons. At 9:30, Rachel checked her reflection one more time. Jeans, soft gray sweater, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked like herself, which was either exactly right or completely wrong. She couldn't tell anymore. The drive to Ethan's house took 20 minutes, leading them out of the city into a quieter neighborhood of older homes with big yards. Rachel had expected something grand given what she knew about Ethan's wealth, but the address led them to a modest 2-story house with blue shutters and a front porch that had seen better days. "This is it?" Maya asked, peering out the window. "This is it." They walked up the front path together, Maya clutching her unicorns, Rachel carrying a store-bought pie she'd grabbed that morning because showing up empty-handed felt wrong. Before they reached the door, it swung open. Ethan stood there in jeans and a faded t-shirt, looking more relaxed than Rachel had ever seen him. Behind him, partially hidden, was a boy with dark hair and serious eyes. Lucas. "Hi," Ethan said, his smile warm and genuine. "You found us okay?" "GPS is a wonderful thing," Rachel said, suddenly feeling awkward standing on his porch. "Come in, please. It's freezing out there." He stepped back, ushering them inside. The house was warm and lived in, with dinosaur pictures taped to walls and a collection of shoes by the door that needed organizing. It smelled like coffee and something baking, cinnamon, maybe. "Lucas, this is Rachel and her daughter Maya," Ethan said gently. "Maya, this is Lucas." Lucas peeked out from behind his father, studying Maya with careful intensity. Maya, never one for shyness, stepped forward, holding out Sparkle. "Hi, I brought my unicorns to show you. This is Sparkle. She's purple like magic." Lucas's eyes widened slightly. He didn't speak, but he reached out tentatively to touch Sparkle's glittery horn. "It's okay," Ethan murmured to his son. "You can say hi if you want to." "Hi," Lucas said quietly. Then, gaining confidence, "I have dinosaurs. Do you want to see them?" "Yes." Maya's enthusiasm was immediate and genuine. "I've never seen real dinosaur toys before." "They're not real dinosaurs, they're models, but they're scientifically accurate." Lucas was already heading toward what Rachel assumed was his room, Maya following close behind, her unicorns temporarily forgotten in Rachel's hands. Ethan and Rachel stood in the entryway watching the kids disappear down the hallway. The sudden quiet between them felt heavy with unspoken things. "That went better than I expected," Ethan said finally. "Lucas doesn't usually warm up to new people that quickly. Maya has that effect. She doesn't understand the concept of strangers, which terrifies me as a parent but works well in situations like this." "Coffee? I just made a fresh pot." "Coffee would be perfect." The kitchen was the heart of the house, Rachel could tell immediately. A large table covered with papers and crayons, windows that let in morning light, and a counter scattered with the evidence of breakfast, plates in the sink, a box of cereal still out, crumbs on the cutting board. "Sorry about the mess," Ethan said, moving to clear space. "We had pancakes this morning and I haven't cleaned up yet." "Ethan, I have a 7-year-old. This is nothing." Rachel set down the pie. "I brought dessert, or breakfast tomorrow. It works for both." "You didn't have to bring anything, but thank you." He poured 2 mugs of coffee, handed her one. "How do you take it?" "Black with 1 sugar, but you already knew that." "I pay attention." The words were simple, but the way he said them made Rachel's chest tighten. They could hear the kids in Lucas's room, their voices carrying down the hallway. Maya's excited chatter mixing with Lucas's more measured explanations. The sound of children playing, of her daughter making a friend, made something in Rachel relax that she hadn't realized was tense. "She's good with him," Ethan observed, leaning against the counter. "Not pushing too hard, letting him set the pace." "She's had practice. Her best friend at school has sensory issues, so Maya's learned to be aware of other people's boundaries." "Oh, that's impressive for a 7-year-old." "She's had to grow up faster than I wanted. Being the child of a single parent does that sometimes." Ethan nodded, understanding in his expression. "Lucas asked me last night why his mom left. Just straight out, no warning. Why didn't she want to stay with us?" I've tried to explain it before, but how do you tell a 9-year-old that some people aren't equipped for the reality of parenting a child with special needs? That her leaving wasn't his fault, it was her limitation? Rachel set down her coffee and moved closer, not quite touching, but close enough that he'd know she was there. What did you tell him? The truth. That his mom loved him but didn't know how to show it in the way he needed. That some people run away from hard things because they don't know how to be brave. And that her leaving meant we got to build our own life together, just the two of us. And that life is pretty good even when it's hard. That's a good answer. I don't know if it was the right answer, but it was honest. He looked at her, really looked at her. You know what struck me about you that first night at the party? Before everything went wrong? What? The way you held yourself together. You were uncomfortable and clearly didn't want to be there, but you showed up anyway because it mattered for your job. That kind of quiet strength, that's rare. I didn't feel strong. I felt humiliated. Strength isn't about how you feel. It's about what you do despite how you feel. He paused. You could have walked away that night, left me sitting there alone, saved yourself the embarrassment. But you came back. That told me everything I needed to know about who you are. Rachel felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I came back because I was tired of running. Tired of letting other people's cruelty dictate my actions. And I spoke up because I was tired of watching good people get hurt by careless ones. Ethan set down his own mug. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Two tired people trying to do better. Is that what we are? A pair? The question hung in the air between them, delicate and dangerous. Ethan's expression shifted, became more serious, more intentional. I don't know what we are yet, he said carefully, but I know I'd like to find out. If you're willing. Before Rachel could respond, Maya came running into the kitchen, Lucas trailing behind her with a plastic dinosaur in each hand. Mama, Lucas has a T-Rex that roars when you press its back. And it's accurate because he showed me pictures of real fossils and everything. That's very cool, baby. And Maya knows all about different types of unicorns, Lucas added, his initial shyness completely gone. She says some have wings and some have special magical powers. Can we watch a movie about unicorns? After lunch, Ethan said. Right now, how about you two show Rachel your dinosaur museum? The dinosaur museum turned out to be Lucas's room, which was indeed filled with carefully arranged dinosaur models, books about paleontology, and posters showing different prehistoric eras. Lucas gave them a tour with the seriousness of a professional curator, explaining each exhibit while Maya listened with rapt attention. This is my favorite, Lucas said, pointing to a large brachiosaurus. It was an herbivore and lived in the late Jurassic period. It could eat from really tall trees because of its long neck. That's amazing, Maya said sincerely. I bet if unicorns were real, they'd be friends with brachiosauruses because they're both peaceful. Lucas considered this. Maybe, but unicorns aren't in the fossil record, so we can't know for sure. They're in our hearts, Maya countered. That's a different kind of real. Rachel caught Ethan's eye over the children's heads, both of them fighting smiles. The philosophical debate between scientific fact and magical possibility was clearly going to be an ongoing theme. They ordered pizza for lunch, letting the kids pick the toppings, half pepperoni for Lucas, half cheese with extra cheese for Maya. While they waited for delivery, the four of them sat at the kitchen table playing a board game Lucas had chosen, something involving matching dinosaurs to their prehistoric periods. Rachel watched Ethan with his son. The gentle patience in the way he explained rules, the pride in his eyes when Lucas remembered facts about different dinosaurs, the subtle way he redirected when Lucas started to get overwhelmed by too many choices. This was what good parenting looked like. Present, engaged, loving without being smothering. Your turn, Mama, Maya said, pulling Rachel back to the game. She drew a card, a triceratops, and tried to match it to the correct time period. Maya helped her, whispering encouragement, delighted to be teaching her mother something. The pizza arrived and they ate at the kitchen table, the kids chattering about school and favorite foods and whether dragons were related to dinosaurs. Normal family conversation, except they weren't a family. They were two separate units, two single parents with their children, testing out what it might feel like to be something more. After lunch, they did watch a movie, a compromise choice about a girl who found a baby dragon, which had elements of both fantasy and science that satisfied both children. Maya and Lucas sat on the couch together, sharing a blanket, completely absorbed in the story. Rachel and Ethan sat in the kitchen where they could still see the kids but have some privacy to talk. "This is nice," Rachel said quietly. "Normal. I didn't realize how much I missed normal. It's been just Lucas and me for 3 years. I forgot what it was like to have other people in the house, to hear a kid laughing who isn't my kid. It's—" He paused, searching for the word. "It's healing, I think. Maya's father hasn't seen her in 8 months. He sends cards on her birthday and Christmas, calls maybe once every few months, but he's not part of her life in any real way. Sometimes I feel guilty that I can't give her a complete family." "You give her something better," Ethan said firmly. "You give her a parent who shows up, who's present, who loves her enough to build a whole life around her needs. That's not less than a complete family. That's more than a lot of kids with 2 parents ever get." "Do you really believe that?" "I have to believe it. Otherwise, I'm failing Lucas by not giving him a mother figure, and I know that's not true. He has everything he needs." Rachel looked at him, this man who'd somehow become essential to her in such a short time. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "That night at the party, before everything happened, did you notice me before we were seated together?" Ethan smiled slightly. "Yes. You came in late, looking like you'd rather be anywhere else. But you held your head up and walked in anyway. I thought you were brave." "I was terrified." "Like I said, brave." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she felt the warmth of it. "Rachel, I need to be honest with you about something." Her heart rate picked up. "Okay." "I didn't just speak up that night because what was happening was wrong. I mean, it was wrong, and I would have said something regardless. But part of it was personal. I was angry that they were hurting you specifically, that they thought they could treat you like that and get away with it." "Why?" "Because even in that short time sitting beside you, I could see who you are. Someone trying her best under difficult circumstances. Someone who deserves respect and kindness. Someone I wanted to know better." He did touch her hand then, just his fingers brushing against hers. "And I still want to know you better. Not because we're both single parents going through similar struggles, but because you're remarkable, and I'd like to be part of your life if you'll let me." Rachel's breath caught. This was the moment, the choice point where she could pull back, protect herself, keep things safe and uncomplicated. Or she could be brave. "I want that too," she said. "I'm terrified of it, but I want it. We can be terrified together. We can take it slow, no pressure, just seeing where this goes." "What about the kids?" "They seem to be doing pretty well." They both looked toward the living room where Maya and Lucas were completely engrossed in the movie, Maya's head resting on Lucas's shoulder in unconscious friendship. "They do, don't they?" "We don't have to define anything today," Ethan said. "We don't have to make promises or declarations. We just have to be willing to try, to take it one day at a time and see what develops." One day at a time. Rachel could do that. She'd been doing it for 5 years, just surviving, just getting through. But this was different. This was choosing to hope instead of just endure. "Okay," she said. One day at a time. The movie ended and the kids immediately wanted to play outside in Ethan's backyard, despite the cold. Rachel and Ethan bundled them up in coats and scarves and watched from the porch as they ran around, Maya teaching Lucas a complicated game involving unicorns saving dinosaurs from an imaginary villain. "She has quite an imagination," Ethan observed. "She gets it from me. I used to make up stories for her every night when she was little. Now she makes up her own. Lucas likes facts more than stories, but maybe Maya can teach him that imagination is okay too." They stood side by side on the porch, shoulders almost touching, watching their children play. The moment felt significant somehow, like they were standing at the edge of something new and deciding whether to step forward or back. "I was so angry after the party," Rachel said suddenly. "Not just humiliated, but furious. At Christine, at everyone who laughed, at the whole situation. But also at myself for caring what they thought, for letting their opinions matter. You're allowed to care. Being hurt by cruelty doesn't make you weak. I know that intellectually. But emotionally I kept thinking I should be stronger, more resilient, able to just brush it off. Resilience isn't about not feeling pain," Ethan said. "It's about feeling it and continuing anyway. You did that. You felt the hurt and still showed up the next day." That's strength. Maya came running up to the porch, breathless and pink-cheeked from the cold. Mama, can Lucas come to our house sometime? I want to show him my unicorn collection and my room. Rachel looked at Ethan, who nodded slightly. Sure, baby. We can arrange that. Yes! Maya pumped her fist in the air and ran back to Lucas to tell him the good news. As the afternoon wore into early evening, Rachel knew they needed to head home. Maya had homework to finish, and Rachel needed to prepare for the week ahead. But she was reluctant to leave, reluctant to end this day that had felt so easy and right. We should probably go, she said finally. Probably, Ethan agreed, though he didn't move either. They gathered up Maya's unicorns and coats, said their goodbyes. Lucas hugged Maya with surprising enthusiasm for a child who'd been shy just hours earlier. Thank you for teaching me about unicorns, he said seriously. I still think dinosaurs are better, but unicorns are pretty cool too. Thank you for showing me your museum, Maya replied. Maybe unicorns and dinosaurs can both be the best. Maybe, Lucas agreed. Ethan walked them to their car, helped buckle Maya into her booster seat while Rachel got settled in the driver's seat. Before closing her door, he leaned down so they were eye level. Thank you for today, he said, for bringing Maya over, for giving this a chance. Thank you for inviting us, for making us feel welcome. Same time next week? We could do something different, maybe the children's museum or the park if it's warmer. I'd like that. He straightened up but didn't move away. Drive safe. Text me when you get home? I will. The drive home was quiet, Maya dozing in the back seat, exhausted from her big day. Rachel's mind wandered over everything that had happened, not just today but all week. The party, the confrontation, the investigation, and now this. The tentative beginning of something she hadn't been looking for but desperately needed. She'd spent 5 years building walls, protecting herself and Maya from potential hurt. She'd convinced herself that being alone was safer, easier, better than risking her heart again. But Ethan had slipped past those defenses without even trying, simply by being genuine and kind and present. That night, after Maya was bathed and tucked into bed with Sparkle and Rainbow beside her, Rachel sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and her phone. She texted Ethan as promised. Home safe. Maya fell asleep in the car. She's already asking when we can see you and Lucas again. His response came quickly. Lucas asked the same thing. I told him we'd figure it out. How are you feeling about everything? Rachel thought about how to answer that honestly. Scared, hopeful, confused about how something that started so badly turned into something potentially good. Life is strange that way. The worst nights sometimes lead to the best mornings. Is that what this is? A best morning? I think it could be, if we let it. They texted back and forth for another hour, about nothing and everything, small details about their days, funny things the kids had said, thoughts about the week ahead. The easy conversation of people growing comfortable with each other, learning each other's rhythms and patterns. Finally, around 10, Ethan sent, I should let you sleep. But Rachel, I'm really glad you sat next to me at that party. Even though everything that followed was terrible, I can't regret the circumstances that brought us together. Me neither, she typed back. Good night, Ethan. Good night. Rachel got ready for bed feeling lighter than she had in years. The week had been brutal in many ways, emotionally exhausting, professionally complicated, personally challenging. But it had also cracked something open inside her, let light into spaces that had been dark for too long. Sunday was lazy and domestic. Rachel and Maya did laundry and grocery shopping, cleaned the house, baked cookies that turned out slightly burned but still edible. Normal single-parent Sunday activities. But Rachel found herself smiling more, humming while she worked, feeling something that took her a while to identify as happiness. Monday arrived with its usual mix of anticipation and dread. Rachel dropped Maya at school and headed to work, bracing herself for whatever the new week would bring. The investigation was over, consequences had been delivered, but the aftermath would linger. The office felt different without Christine's presence. Her replacement, a woman named Patricia, who transferred from another department, had already moved into the office. People were quieter, more careful, still processing everything that had happened. Rachel settled into her work, grateful for the routine of spreadsheets and reports and problems that had clear solutions. Around mid-morning, Marcus stopped by her desk. Hey, how are you holding up? Better than I expected. How about you? Ready for things to get back to normal, whatever that means now. He paused. Listen, I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For not backing down. For forcing all of us to look at the culture we'd been tolerating. I've worked here 3 years and I've seen stuff like what happened to you happen to other people. I never said anything because it seemed easier not to. But watching you stand up for yourself, it made me realize I need to do better. Rachel felt emotion tightening her throat. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. You made this place better by refusing to accept how things were. That took guts. After Marcus left, Rachel sat with his words, letting them sink in. She hadn't thought about it that way, that her refusal to disappear, to accept humiliation quietly, might have ripple effects beyond her own situation. Maybe other people would speak up now when they saw wrongdoing. Maybe the culture would actually change. The week progressed with a new rhythm. Work during the day, texts with Ethan throughout, phone calls in the evening after the kids were in bed. They were building something, slowly and carefully, testing the foundation before adding weight to it. Friday afternoon, Ethan showed up at her desk carrying 2 cups of coffee. Taking a break? He asked. I could take a break. They walked to the park across the street, the same bench where they'd had lunch the week before. The weather had warmed slightly, making it almost pleasant to sit outside. I've been thinking, Ethan said, about what happens next. With us, I mean. Rachel's heart rate picked up. What have you concluded? That I don't want to rush this. I don't want to put pressure on either of us to be anything other than what we are right now, but I also don't want to pretend that what's developing between us isn't real or important. So what do? We keep doing what we're doing, slow, careful, letting the kids get to know each other, letting ourselves figure out if this works outside of crisis circumstances. He turned to look at her directly. And we're honest about it. No games, no pretending to feel less than we do or more than we're ready for. I can do that. Good. Because I like you, Rachel, more. I like who you are and how you think and the way you love your daughter. I like talking to you about stupid things like pancake shapes and important things like how to raise good humans. And I'd like to see where this goes if we give it a real chance. Rachel felt tears threatening, happy ones this time. I like you too. And I'm terrified of that, but I'm more terrified of not trying. He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. Then we try. Together. They sat there for a while, hands linked, watching office workers hurry past on their lunch breaks. It wasn't a dramatic moment, no grand declarations or sweeping gestures, just 2 people deciding to be brave, to risk hoping for something better. That evening, Rachel called her sister Lauren to update her on everything that had happened. Wait, let me get this straight, Lauren said. You had a play date with him and the kids hit it off, and now you're what, dating? We're not dating exactly, we're just seeing what happens. That's called dating, Rachel. It's more complicated than that. It's only complicated because you're making it complicated. He likes you. You like him. The kids like each other. What's complicated about that? Rachel smiled despite herself. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You're just finally listening. Lauren's voice softened. I'm proud of you, you know, for not running away from this, for letting yourself want something. I'm not sure I had a choice. He kind of ambushed my defenses. The best ones always do. After they hung up, Rachel sat with Maya while she did her homework, helping with spelling words and math problems. Her daughter chattered about Lucas, about the dinosaur museum, about all the things she wanted to show him when he came to their house. Mama, is Lucas going to be my friend forever? I don't know about forever, baby, but hopefully for a long time. And his dad? Is he going to be your friend? Rachel considered how to answer that. Yes. He's my friend. Good. You need more friends. You're always alone except for me. The observation, delivered with a child's blunt honesty, hit Rachel harder than she expected. She'd thought she was hiding her loneliness from Maya, protecting her from the reality of their isolated existence. But kids saw more than adults gave them credit for. You're right, Rachel said. I do need more friends, and I'm working on that. I'm glad. Friends make everything better. That night, after Maya was asleep, Rachel stood at her bedroom window looking out at the quiet street. Lights were on in neighboring houses, evidence of other lives being lived, other families going through their evening routines. For years, she'd felt separate from that, disconnected from the normal flow of community and connection. But something had shifted. The terrible night at the holiday party had cracked her open, forced her to confront the isolation she'd built around herself. And in that breaking, space had opened for something new to grow. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Lucas just told me he loves Maya like a sister, not sure how to process that level of attachment after one playdate. Rachel smiled and typed back, Maya told me she needs to show Lucas her whole unicorn collection because friends share important things. I think we've created a situation. The best kind of situation. Want to have dinner this weekend? All four of us, somewhere casual where the kids can be loud and we can actually talk. I'd love that. Saturday at 6? There's a pizza place with an arcade that Lucas likes. Fair warning, it's noisy and chaotic. Noisy and chaotic sounds perfect. They confirmed plans and said goodnight, but Rachel lay awake for a while after, thinking about the strange path that had led her here. A cruel seating chart at a work party. A man who'd seemed invisible but turned out to be anything but. A week of consequences and confrontations that had changed everything. If someone had told her a month ago that she'd be planning dinner dates with a man and his son, that her daughter would be making friends with a boy who loved dinosaurs, that she'd be allowing herself to hope for more than just survival, she wouldn't have believed it. But here she was, scared but hopeful, uncertain but willing, opening herself to the possibility that life could be more than just getting through each day, that she deserved connection and joy, and maybe even love. The week leading up to Saturday passed in a blur of work and parenting and stolen moments of conversation with Ethan. They texted throughout the day, called in the evenings, found reasons to see each other at work even though they didn't technically need to. Rachel noticed people watching them sometimes, speculating, but she found she didn't care as much anymore. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. She was building something real, and their opinions couldn't touch that. Saturday arrived bright and clear. Rachel let Maya choose her outfit, purple leggings, a shirt with a unicorn, and her light-up sneakers. She dressed carefully herself, wanting to look nice without seeming like she was trying too hard. The pizza place was exactly as advertised, loud and chaotic and perfect. Lucas and Maya were immediately drawn to the arcade games, begging for quarters and racing off to try everything. Rachel and Ethan settled into a booth where they could watch the kids while actually having a conversation. "This is nice," Rachel said, having to raise her voice slightly over the noise. "This is pandemonium," Ethan corrected, but he was smiling. "But yes, it's nice." They ordered pizza and watched their kids play, laughing at their enthusiasm, at the way Maya was teaching Lucas about some game involving shooting baskets while Lucas explained the physics of trajectory. "They're good together," Rachel observed. "They are. Lucas has never connected with another kid this quickly. Usually it takes months for him to warm up to people." Maya's never had a friend she could talk to about both unicorns and science. She's in heaven. The pizza arrived and they called the kids over, watching them demolish slices while talking nonstop about the games they'd played and which ones they wanted to try next. It was messy and loud and chaotic, and Rachel felt something in her chest expand with happiness. This was what family dinners looked like. Not perfect or polished, but real and alive and full of joy. She'd almost forgotten what that felt like. After dinner, while the kids went back to the arcade, Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being brave enough to try this. For bringing Maya. For letting me into your life even though I know it scares you." "It terrifies me," Rachel admitted. "But it also feels right in a way nothing has felt right in years." "I know what you mean. After Lucas's mom left, I convinced myself that being alone was safer, that protecting him meant not bringing anyone new into our lives who might leave and hurt him." He squeezed her hand gently. "But watching him with Maya, seeing how happy he is to have a friend, I realized I was protecting him from the wrong things. He didn't need protection from potential hurt. He needed the chance to connect, to trust, to experience joy." "We both did," Rachel said softly. "Our kids both did." They sat there holding hands across the pizza-stained table in a noisy arcade restaurant, and Rachel felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope for a future that was more than just survival. Hope that she could have connection and partnership and maybe even love without sacrificing the life she'd built for herself and Maya. The evening ended with reluctant goodbyes in the parking lot, Maya and Lucas hugging fiercely while making plans for the next time they'd see each other. Ethan walked Rachel to her car, helping buckle Maya into her seat before turning to Rachel. "This doesn't have to be complicated," he said quietly. "We don't have to have all the answers right now. We just have to keep showing up." "I can do that." "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. Whatever this becomes, however long it takes to figure out, I'm in this." Rachel felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "Me too." He kissed her forehead, gentle and brief, a promise of more to come when they were both ready. Then he stepped back, letting her get in the car, watching as she pulled out of the parking lot. On the drive home, Maya chattered about the arcade games and the pizza, and how Lucas had promised to show her more dinosaur books next time. Rachel listened with half her attention, the other half processing the emotions swirling through her. She'd spent 5 years building walls, convincing herself that safety meant solitude. But tonight had shown her that real safety wasn't about avoiding risk. It was about finding people who made the risk worthwhile. People who showed up consistently, who treated her with respect and kindness, who saw her as more than just a single mom struggling to hold everything together. Ethan saw her as extraordinary. And maybe, finally, she was starting to see herself that way too. That night, after Maya was asleep, Rachel stood in her kitchen with a cup of tea, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. The humiliation at the holiday party that had felt like the worst thing that could happen. The investigation and consequences that had upended her workplace. The slow, careful building of something new with Ethan and Lucas. None of it had been easy. None of it had been what she'd planned or wanted. But somehow, through the hardest parts, she'd found something she didn't know she was missing. Connection, support, the possibility of shared joy instead of solitary endurance. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. "Lucas says tonight was the best night of his whole life. He's already planning what games to show Maya next time." Rachel smiled and typed back. "Maya's asleep clutching Sparkle and talking about dinosaurs in her sleep. I think you've converted her." "Never. She'll always be Team Unicorn, but maybe she can appreciate dinosaurs too. Maybe we can all appreciate different things and still belong together." There was a pause before his response came. "I really like you, Rachel Moore." "I really like you too, Ethan Cole. Get some sleep. I'll see you tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," she confirmed. Rachel finished her tea and got ready for bed, feeling lighter than she had in years. The road ahead was still uncertain, still full of questions and potential complications. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't facing it alone. She had Maya, always. But now she also had Ethan and Lucas. She had friendship and possibility and the tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, she deserved good things, that her daughter deserved to see her mother happy, connected, part of something bigger than just their small family of 2. As Rachel drifted off to sleep, she thought about that terrible night at the holiday party. The seating chart that was meant to humiliate her, the jokes at her expense, the cruelty dressed up as humor. If she could go back and change it, would she? The answer surprised her. No, because that night, as awful as it was, had cracked something open inside her, had forced her to stop accepting less than she deserved, had brought Ethan into her life at exactly the moment when they both needed someone who understood. The worst night had led to the best mornings, and there were more mornings to come, full of possibility and hope, and the kind of joy that came from choosing to be brave instead of safe. Rachel smiled in the darkness and let sleep take her, dreaming of dinosaurs and unicorns and 2 tired people finding rest in each other's company. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. But tonight, right now, everything was exactly as it should be. The night that had tried to humiliate her had ended by restoring her dignity. And in that restoration, it had opened the door to something real, something worth the risk, worth the fear, worth every uncertain step forward. She didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. And that made all the difference.